Welcome to the Cybersecurity and Cloud Podcast, the podcast where we learn from cybersecurity experts how to stay safe, private, and secure on the cloud and in code. CSCP is hosted by Francesco Cipollone, your cybersecurity friend with a passion for all things cyber and sharing stories of other professionals with you. Let's dive in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cybersecurity and Cloud Podcast. Today, we have a very good friend from a very good organization that we work very, very closely with that fight the good fight around application security. And it's a topic that we don't talk almost at all. No, jokes aside, I have the very good pleasure to welcome on the show Liran Tal. That is the Director of Development Advocacy for Snyk, but a very good and proactive contribution across software and developer community and cybersecurity community of recent Github Stars, and very involved with the open source community. But I'll stop blabbering about your profile, Liran. I'll give you the microphone to you. Tell us, our audience, a little bit where you're coming from, why you do what you do, and what's the plan for the future.
Oh wow, thanks. A lot of stuff to answer. Uh, well, Francesco, thank you for having me and inviting me to the podcast. I'm really happy to be here. So I'm basically a software engineer, doing web security activism, and I love doing open source software. So all of that did together, and the fact that I love and been part of like the JavaScript and Node.js community, kind of like brought me into essentially doing developer advocacy for Snyk, which is a developer first security company. So basically, kind of like my mission in life.
Your why.
Yes, my why. Why I wake up every morning, happy. Not at 7 or 8 a.m. That's not happy, but a bit later. I'm not a morning person. But I do wake up very happy doing my job, which is not really my job. It's actually my passion and what I really love doing. And that is working with developers and helping them. And I love security. I love open source. I love JavaScript, all of those things. I love building software, building projects. And I do that, at Snyk and my off hours. But I'd like to help developers also do that in a very secure way. And there's like a ton of things that we could, just generally educate each other in this community about how to build things correctly, what are some pitfalls to be aware of and stuff like that. So this is what I do on many levels of developer advocacy. So this is me a bit.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much, and thank you for coming to the show. It's a thing. It's an episode that I wanted to do since very long time. But maybe for who can't see you or who doesn't follow you on Twitter, tell me one thing. Why the hat? What's with the hat?
Well, it's a good hat. No, it's Yoda, and Yoda is a very interesting, smart creature. Which, if you follow or not follow the Star Wars, I want to say trilogy, but it's not a trilogy anymore.
It's a saga. Anything nowadays is becoming a very
That's
long
true.
season episode. Hence why season 3.
Indeed. But yeah, so I don't know. Check out some of Yoda's quotes, and I think it might help you in life. So I like that symbol.
No, I love that. I love it. It gives an edge, and it gives you a nice, interesting approach on. The question is, why don't you speak like Yoda on some of the presentation?
Maybe I should. We'll see how that goes.
Just the intro. See, well, cybersecurity is an easy topic, so we can just talk reverse, and everybody will understand it maybe better.
An easy topic, cybersecurity is.
Very easy. So, how did you stumble across, cybersecurity? How did you start getting involved in this industry? And maybe then, as a follow-on question, what is your overview of the current state of the industry?
Yep. Well, I think I got to it at a very young age, so I won't go back into my teens. But basically, I was part of a lot of like hacking scenes and hacking groups, in Israel and stuff like that. So like I always had that passion, that curiosity of like being part of back then it was freaking and stuff like that. But this was like the early days. So I this is like just to give the context where I was like always aware of like security. I didn't intentionally intend to like put myself into like an AppSec role, like be a cybersecurity person, because I loved building software as well. So like I took that route, like just building things. But amazingly things, closed circles and things like that in life. So got back into doing this, and I think, like I was saying before, I think my pivotal moment of doing like a developer advocacy role with Snyk was that, a couple of years back before joining Snyk, I think at 2018 probably. What happened is I was already like part of like the Node Foundation security working group. So I was like doing this activism kind of like as a hobby. I was writing a book on Node essential security topics. So I was doing a lot of things in security, and just doing that now kind of like very much intertwined into like, I want to do this full time. I want to help create a secure open source ecosystem and help secure a lot of developers and what they build. So this is how I got into doing this really full time.
Oh, brilliant. And I think a lot of the story of people that stumble across cybersecurity and then grow in this work. And as I say, cybersecurity is nothing else than doing things correctly. So it's not, I think we tend to classify, and that's maybe our mistake as an industry, we tend to classify this as a different thing. It's just a mindset. In my opinion, cybersecurity is a mindset, and that's why we have maybe the challenge between cybersecurity people and developers, that it's the same thing. It's just doing things right and being aware of certain things.
Yes, I agree.
But maybe
there's a lot of awareness.
Yeah, and maybe as a follow-on on that, what do you see right now on the industry? Are you seeing like an evolution on the industry? Are we getting better, or are we getting more confused? We had the massive log4j, but also on the good news side, we had Microsoft and Google teaming up to fundamentally inspect a lot of open source tool. I'm afraid that we're gonna get slammed with a million CV on the consequence of that and panic mode. But what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I have the very specific lens most of the time, which is a lot about open source security. So how do we build in an open source manner securely thing? So that means essentially open source is I don't have to say it's growing. It's like it's already massive and huge, and it's still growing. Any adoption of it and building software based on that. So that essentially brings into light the fact that now we need to be responsible of all of those open source libraries that we as developers build, maybe contribute, maybe maintain. And that is a very wide topic that's essentially taking a lot of, I think, a lot of focus for many, many organizations, individual maintainers, and foundations like the Open Source Security Foundation, the OpenSSF, right? Like it's supply chain security in the sense of what's in my supply chain as a developer. So everything from my code to the dependencies that track my code, to where does this get built on some CI server somewhere that needs to run securely, not expose secrets, not leak data from collaborators who maybe fork the project, and you might accidentally be exposing secrets and stuff like that. There's an entire ecosystem across your SDLC, or software development lifecycle, that's supply chain related. And I think that is a huge topic, whether you're a developer who is like front end, back end, supply chain, and basically building today cloud native applications. You are very much responsible to security. I've had an interesting tweet back then. It had interesting replies to it as well. I said like, every engineer is a security engineer, and
back to the topic, security is everybody's job and nobody's job. That's my favorite topic.
Someone replied and said, what was it? It was, every engineer is a vulnerability or something like that. And I was like, that's also true.
Every engineer is a vulnerability engineer. But I think there is a truth in that. There is, cybersecurity is not different from software development, but is a mindset and awareness, and the ramification of the possibility of attack, and the mindset of threat modeling. In my opinion, I think it's something that we need to educate. So there is an element of education, but there's an element of also looking at it and prioritizing, and not getting flooded by alert, because as you rightfully say, any software company right now is using open source in a way, shape, or another. I don't believe any single project that has been built from scratch. So it's a problem that is everywhere. So being aware, but also prioritizing, because as well as me, that any organization that start on this path will start scanning and will get inundated by a number of findings. So how do organizations see through that sea of data and get their head around a structured approach on this problem?
Yeah. Well, it's a tough question, I guess, because it really depends on where you are, like on the graph. And so whether you're like starting small or not, it depends what you're doing and how branched you are. And of course, enterprises have a lot bigger risk issues that are like a ton of moving parts that they need to like account for. But I want to give like maybe I want to give a plug for something. There's like this Puppet has this DevOps state of DevOps kind of things report, which they've been doing for several years, and it had an interesting observation into they have been surveying a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, many people doing open source and DevOps, and what they found is an interesting insight. They took all of the survey respondents on a specific couple of topics and questions, and they've put them on like 5 kind of maturity levels. And what they saw is that if you are very mature in your DevOps practices, like you're like level 4 and 5, you are doing really great on security, right? Because you already like embraced everything that's like part of the DevOps culture. So adding security in terms of how do you protect the organization as a whole doesn't slow down the organization. An interesting finding that they had is that that on level 1 and level 3, so like those that are less much like not mature at all, and those that are like just in the middle, those in the middle really have a harder time than those that just started. And that is because those in the middle are kind of like working on a lot of technical debt. So like there's like a lot of refactoring and a lot of like changes. I need to like get things going, and there's like writing, driving against time essentially. So getting security and everything else is a bit of a pain. But once you get through that hurdle, everything kind of like opens up, and it's like amazing and rainbow, and it's in the sky and stuff like that. But that's what it means, right? Like, and so essentially, to like answer your question, I think there's a lot of tooling and like risk assessment and application security kind of like management and posture of like how are you doing, and there's everything from the dependencies that you use to the licenses that they have, which is by the way a legal risk, not even a security risk in that sense. Everything from like your cloud native infrastructure in production, so like runtime, what are you doing? There's just a lot, and I think
container,
out of the time,
infrastructure,
yes,
and pipeline themselves.
Pipelines, yes, misconfigurations, which is a really very recurring, cloud infrastructure risk, which I can talk about that for hours specifically, because like, oh my God, like we have like, I call it as we have democratized IT resources, right? Now everything is basically software. It's not as it used to be a decade or two back. It's you want to spin up a queue, you want to spin up an email server, you want to spin up new boxes, whatever. Just write some code that's basically declarative, or I don't know, maybe imperative, that defines what you need, and you deploy it, and you get that amount of like CPU power in the cloud and everything around it. Like everything has been democratized and abstracted by software. And it's at the hands of everyone. That's what I said. That's why I said like before, as a developer building, that by the way matter if like front end or back end. Front end people, I talk to them a lot. They don't realize they're like front end cloud native developers, because you build on Vercel and Netlify, and that has configuration as well. And if you misconfigure like a function incorrectly or something, it has a function on the cloud. It has implications. So kind of like we have as developers now a lot of attack surface and responsibility. Exactly, that's part of it.
From greater power comes greater responsibility. One Spider-Man.
There we go. Yes, we can travel there.
Yes, but I think maybe it's too much. Maybe it's the shift left. I don't know. I have a feeling that the shift left is delegation left on my perspective, and the more executive and the more conversation we had, it's like, developer, you're responsible for security, just fix security. This is true. We've been banging the drum for security is everybody's job, but then needs also direction and kind of a harmonic work together. Because I always see that as, people that build a house need direction, need structure. If you're not aware where to look or how the house should look like, everybody build their own way, and then we find in the middle of Frankenstein house, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You're right. Like, we need to help developers, and I think the whole developer first kind of like, I think both mindset, right, that we're kind of talking a lot about is, yeah, we are empowering developers in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, you don't expect, I don't know, or do you maybe they expect like developers to build also, let's say, performant applications? Do they need to be accessible? So like, you are within web accessibility guidelines for people with disabilities. Maybe do they need to write tests, or do we just like keep a team of QA people writing all the tests, and we free developers from that burden as well?
Right.
So it's and
Maturity.
probably maturity as well, right? Like, all of this. And the thing is, I think it's, yes, we are expecting a lot of from people, but that is because we want quality software. We want to build quality software.
No, but I think we expect that as a standard, where standard is not. Both from a security, from QA perspective, from testing perspective, from usability, and so on. I think just expanding on, we expect every developer to be built in the same way and come out of development school or any kind of school. Well, truth of the matter is not.
I hope that's changing, though. I hope that's changing. Like, there's a lot more awareness and a lot more educational programs, boot camps, programs like, women and STEM groups and stuff like that, women in cybersecurity, STEM groups. So I think a lot of awareness goes into cybersecurity, and I think a lot of recent events, anything from SolarWinds to Log4j to recently open source sustainability issues with like Colors and Faker, COA, malicious NPM packets, like stuff like that really makes it into the news. I think we need to help developers. Yes. So we need to help them, but I think the want to build secure, professional, high quality software is there. We don't need to like convince anyone; they get it.
This episode is brought to you by the generosity of AppSec Phoenix Ltd. AppSec helps startups and enterprises solve complex software security problems by using smart data aggregation and complex machine learning software. Discover how AppSec Phoenix helps CISO and developers remove friction and maximize the use of DevSecOps professionals at www.appsecphoenix.com. AppSec Phoenix is the new and smart dev-first way to manage your software vulnerability. Follow the tag #AppSecSmart.
They get it, and I think is at this point in time is bringing the organization together and saying, okay, now that you want to build software and quality software, you actually need to dedicate more time, and it's not first things that come, first things that goes out. So it's also balance between usability, new feature requirements, and security requirement, as well as the time that it takes to build decent software and iteration, and kind of a balance between speed and quality. And actually, on that subject, I wanted to pick your brain on something. We had at the Open Forum some time ago an intense discussion of what was the real true core of DevSecOps. It's like speed of development equals security because you react fast and you can develop fast and smaller change, or is security actually a broader spectrum? Take your time, assess it, and so on. What is the best security stand of a team? Going fast or doing an assessment?
Between those two.
Yeah, between those two, which one will be your preference, or which one? And don't answer me. It depends.
No, I don't think it's not. It depends. I just think I think it's both of them. Not that it's one of them. I think it's both of them. I think that's kind of like what the book Accelerate actually have, which stemmed a lot from that Puppet DevOps State of DevOps thing report talked about, which is you do not need to basically building maintainable software and shipping it fast doesn't come on top of like sacrificing security or anything else. That's kind of the thing, right? Because if you are able to deploy, something, a commit or whatever, like a production feature in 2 minutes to production, and it goes through all of the pipelines and it's there. And that's like really fast. You're like very mature on, like probably on like the 5% of people, organizations that are doing that in the world. But at the same time, even if that has a serious security issue, right, whatever that is, you found out about it, rolling back and, basically taking the step back with what you need to do is as fast, right? It's like 5 minutes afterwards. That's what it kind of like talks about. So it's not about sacrificing. I think you should definitely do practices like threat modeling and secure design. All of those should still happen. They shouldn't be sacrificing anything else. So security and DevSecOps, I think, is basically enabling teams to develop really fast, but within a specific policy or guardrails, right? Like these are the stuff that you should definitely not release something out where there's 5 known critical security issues with that dependency. Maybe having like one medium or whatever that's like dev dependency somewhere, something else, that's a policy that maybe works for organization. And as we know, like in the security and cybersecurity field, a lot of the times it's really about risk tolerance, right? Like what risks are you accepting? It's very, I think, very timely to these days with inflation and everything going on. It's like, not investing or not doing something else is a decision that you're making. So also not investing in security, that's, you're basically have now taken a risk essentially you've explicitly taken a risk not to invest in security and create a big, risk for your organization. So I think that's
not
kind of
taking
like
an action is actually taking an action.
Exactly. Yes, you're explicitly basically doing that by deciding not to.
I like the idea. I like where the discussion was going on the risk aspect and the risk perspective, because it turns the discussion away from the traditional pushback from security, or the traditional discussion that we have in security of, if you have high, if you have medium, if you have critical, without any context whatsoever, that's bad. That's not atomically bad. As you rightfully say, is deciding where to go, which one to accept as a risk or as an organization contract, and then letting developer do what they are meant to do. But also, I think I've seen a shift, or I've seen kind of two kind of divide between organization that are maybe cloud native, more modern, that are more engineering focused, and then the traditional, financial institution or more traditional enterprise that don't have that engineering background and power and struggle to understand. In the new world, they're much more keen to actually do DevSecOps and be more aligned. In the old world, I find that it's a bit more challenging. And the language that could work potentially for both is risk. Because ultimately we talked in risk, but we struggle to put a risk, a quantification. We struggle to put these terms in software development for some reason. Why is that? Why do you think is that?
I think it's not that easy to quantify risk, because a lot of the time security is kind of like an invisible thing, right? Like as long as you haven't been breached, hacked, whatever, malwared, I don't know, whatever security risk kind of like waiting for you if you're just not doing the right thing. Until then, essentially you think, hey, that's amazing. Like it's not raining outside. Like, it's fine. The moment it starts raining, the moment you have a security breach, the moment something bad happens, that is when you feel it. And it's very painful when that happens. But until that time, it's very much invisible. And I think the sad part about it is also amazing security is also to an extent a little bit invisible, right? Like if you're doing everything amazingly well and no one hacks you, someone can say, hey, I don't know, we're doing fine. Let's take the security budget out because I think we're doing fine. But like it's because you have invested in security so well, right? Like because you have everything well. So I think that's the tricky part with getting security. And that's why it's so important to like educate everyone and explain the risks are out there. You just have to like look around, right? Like just, you read headlines all the time about like the oil rig in the US, whatever, got hacked because of whatever happened there. But it's everywhere. It's states, it's, nation states, it's professionals, it's hobbyists, it's ScriptKit is running, fuzzers, automating tool, whatever. It's just all the time. Just if you want to feel it happening, put up a
just
box
open a port.
Exactly. And look at the logs and tell me, oh my God, and just look at it and see how many attempts you get. I think someone will share this on they just installed like an SSH saying on my Twitter feed. It was like, a week or like last week. I don't know if you've seen that, Francesco, but they just said, I just put up a box somewhere on the cloud. It had an SSH open, and they had like logged all the incorrect attempts, and it was, within hours of it being up, like a new IP address, whatever. Actually, I don't know why new IP address, but whatever. Just a new box. Because IP addresses are finite, so like it's not really new. It just switched from someone else to you. But anyway, like you get scanned. Shodan there's like a ton of stuff happening in this role that are like really dangerous, and so I think it really comes down to internalizing that security is important.
A must.
Like, yes, it's.
I don't think it's important. It's a must nowadays.
True.
I don't think you can say I'm gonna leave my door unlocked because I trust the community. I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, between trust and risk assessment is two different things. And back in software development, any company is a software company. So anything is commoditized. Any company now is moving to the cloud. So you can't afford anymore to say, remove the security budget. But maybe I can optimize the security budget. But in order to optimize, you need to measure it.
Yes.
Right? You don't know if something is there, if something is not there.
Yeah. And have to take some decisions as well.
Yeah. And I think the risk I like the idea of risk because it kind of democratize and quantification. It kind of shows their value, or at least give you an assessment, or if you can run an assessment of your whole organization, then you know where you are and you stand. And then you can make data-based decision or risk-based decision. And you can also see the impact of security. If security is stable, if the risk is stable, then that's a value it's not increasing. I think we need to mature a little bit more on just threat fighting and just guessing into more pragmatic approach, and maybe not shying away from application security programs that are well-established practice. I don't know why we never put it together, or it's so hard to deploy it. What do you think? Systematic application security programs or cloud security programs. Let's put it this way.
And how would they impact, I guess, the business or the individual? What are you like expecting those programs to do?
I think it's more of a systematic approach. It's like, as you rightfully say, it's the shift from the DevSecOps or DevOps.
Yeah.
It's from immature to mature, and it's consistently measure where you are and then kind of building their muscles. And is a systematic approach of a series of activity like threat modeling or education or measuring risk or assessing a number of things and saying, are we good? Are we bad? Where is our target next month? And continuously doing that so that it becomes natural. Reviewing a backlog of vulnerability and planning next sprint what to fix. It's a natural muscle that every team does. But until you bring every team in that kind of exercise or threat modeling or, I don't know, analysis of that data to see what are we doing wrong? Like everybody doing cross-site scripting. Maybe we should look at cross-site scripting, why we keep on doing this. Or maybe we have a node image that's deployed 400 times. And maybe we can fix that image or that specific library in a central page. So it's moving from a reactive approach into a programmatic approach into a proactive approach. And I think in all the years that we've been going at it, I think I've seen a dent in OWASP and the recognition of, we are aware of web security vulnerability. We are getting ahead of the curve on detecting. Now we need to jump on the next stage of, I think, cybersecurity. It is proactive or optimized or data-driven cybersecurity, and that's my baby. So.
I like it. I think it makes sense. I think systematic approach to it is kind of like what we should be doing. I think it's also just how do you deploy or employ a systematic approach?
Right.
And so asking developers again, like to read and review, a 500 pages PDF full of like security insights, it's not really helpful just because it's very, there's a lot of stuff there, and they need security team expertise as well.
They don't get paid enough to actually spend every night reviewing a security report.
Yeah, it's basically back to traditional security, I guess. So if you can help them, be proactive, and so they get to where people are. So if you are, I don't know, if you're building Docker images all day. Like that's what you do as a DevOps person or something else. Like if you have the, in the CLI, if you like once you do, Docker scan or something like that, and you have security findings there, that kind of meets you where you are. That integrates with your workflows, and that's a lot easier to then reason about and kind of like mandate or at least make that kind of default workflow. If you're a developer and you're building software and like you're all the time just looking at code, merging pull requests and stuff like that, then you'd want a tool that actually opens pull requests and tells you, hey, I need to update this and that version. And it actually helps you do that. So you do not need to like spend time reviewing it. There's like a proactive approach, a bot that essentially helps you basically remediate the vulnerability. I think that is kind of like where we're seeing the shift happening, really.
And what's your take on auto fix, on auto remediation versus manual assessment? What's your stand on auto upgrade or auto fix or auto remediation? Because I've always been a little bit on the border of that debate.
Yeah, interesting. I think it has to be there. I think you can't build fast software without automatic like aspects to it. It's this is essentially what DevOps is automating a lot of those things. You can't move fast without automating, without having someone else drive the wheel who's not they're not human. And so that takes us not only to automating find, but also automating fix and remediation. And if you can do it, like why not? At the end of the day, what happens is security people meet with the developers and tell them, hey, you need to do, I don't know, I looked at your code, I code reviewed it, and you are not using parameter binding for this SQL query, right? If they are doing that, why not have a SaaS tool that actually does the same thing and tells you what you need to do? Like that's kind of like the same thing. So that's kind of like, maybe a small plug here for Sneak, but that's kind of like the real life example. Like there's an IDE plugin that you can install and it looks at your code and says the same thing. Like it actually even gives you like example of commits that show you how others fix the issue. So like that is the proactive way of doing it. It's kind of taking what developers, at least in JavaScript, have embraced a lot, like the linters, where they run a linter right before even the test or something. They run a linter, see that the code style, all of that looks fine. At the same time, why not say, hey, I found that parameter binding there. So technologically wise, this has been hard in the past because SaaS tools have been kind of like slow and not having the right context, etc. But it's not the case anymore. There are tooling out there that allows you to like get those insights super fast, to the extent of while you actually save the code in your IDE. So if you can do that, I see like no reason why not doing this. And it's anywhere from that to open source vulnerabilities, and maybe to container runtime and configuration in the cloud and stuff like that as well.
But we have the case where things breaks. We have regression testing and things. So there is always the debate. And we had several people in the community that we had an auto upgrade on WordPress for just a sake of, and half of the word broke.
True. But it's not even security. Let's ignore for a second security. Dependencies for software. I can count several times where the ecosystem broke because someone released a bad version or a malicious version or whatever, or just took a dependency out of the ecosystem, and millions of builds in the ecosystem in the world got hit by it. Not recently. Recently, very recently, Colors and Faker as dependencies getting downloaded millions of times in the JavaScript ecosystem. It impacted the ecosystem unrelated to security at all. So, we have that automation if we want it or not. It's just about how do we handle it and what kind of measures do we put around it.
No, that's brilliant. And I think it's a good point to break it and close the discussion. But we have a tradition here at CSCP Cybersecurity and Cloud Podcast that we discuss positive, negative. I think it was a good balanced discussion, but we tend to close with a very positive message of where we are and where we're going on the industry. So, Liran, what is your positive message for the audience?
So I think every engineer is a security engineer. I think we're going there. I think people are embracing security. I see, I'm working and volunteering for a lot of those boot camps and just like helping bring security awareness to developers. And I think that is getting embraced. So I definitely see that as something that's coming up and helpful. And I think the future is bright in that sense. I think we'll have a bit more challenges on supply chain security, open source, and the impact of security to software. But I think where there's a lot of foundations, work, money, people, hearts, dedicated to solving that problem, that I think I'm hopeful that the next decade is going to be a little bit better for everyone. It's a good opportunity to also maybe call out for, we're running this event called the Big Fix. The idea of that is really, if you go to like the website, just Google the Big Fix sneak or something like that, you basically need to register, scan your projects, fix them, vulnerabilities, and which we help you fix, of course, and you get a free t-shirt. So like we're trying to really give you all the incentives
incentivized
possible. Yes, all the incentives possible to help you fix security issues in your open source projects, side projects, night projects, baby projects, work projects, whatever. So yeah, we'll probably share the link, I guess, on the stream or something. But I think that's kind of that's our way to like try to help and create more awareness as well.
No, I like the idea, and we'll put the show notes with every link that we discussed. But maybe just as a wrap up, where they can find you, Liran?
Cool. So I'm on GitHub and Twitter. I'm actually using different handles for those. So on Twitter, Liran_Tal, and on GitHub, just Liran Tal directly. And that's it. Like, you feel free to ping me. I'm happy to chat. My DMs are open. If you need any help, if you want to get into cybersecurity or chat on any topics, I'm there to help you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for the show, and everybody, thank you very much for listening to another rumble around application security, cloud security. I think it's a natural convergence, and please scan your repository, do your security assessments, and it's out there. It's almost free, but you can find a version that is free, and it takes so little to be more secure. So this is Francesco Cipollone, your host. Liran, thank you so much for coming on the show, and everybody stay safe. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcast and post it on social media tagging Cybersecurity Cloud Podcast for a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Discover other episodes at www.cybersecuritypodcast.com.